Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Insights of a Headhunter. My name is Tiina Jarvet, and I work as a headhunter and a career coach. And today we have a very special guest with us, and we will be talking about the gender equality in hiring. So I want to welcome our guest, Georgia Mourad Brooks. Hi, Georgia. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, Tiina.
It's so wonderful to have this opportunity to have a chat with you about this topic because I know you have done so much in this field, not only talking about it, but with your experience and as a founder of the Nine and from initiative. So please tell people who don't know you who you are and what you do.
With pleasure. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Georgia Mourad Brooks. I am the founder of The Nine, which is a female-focused private members club here in Brussels. We don't always wear pink. Neither Tiina nor I planned this yet again. And in fact, we had for a long time almost like a pink band just to break through of the stereotypes. So I've been working in women's rights advocacy for nearly 10 years now in Brussels. Before that, I was a journalist in London, and I have a mixed British, Egyptian, Canadian background. So I love to exist at the intersections, and I love to exist and work on intentions. And for me, gender equality is a no-brainer. So I'm trying to spread that mission as far as I can.
And I think you have done such a great work by creating this space. I can't emphasize it enough how much it has changed my life and all the people I connected with at the Nine. The opportunities that you bring to women, like without this space, my life and everyone else's who gets to meet you and be at the Nine, it would be so much different. So I want to thank you really for, because it is a big thing. It's not just another networking organization.
I'm very heartened to hear that. I'm very touched, and that's more than I could have hoped for or wanted. I really did want a space, and I wanted a physical space. It's very important, and we'll talk about this maybe in the conversation. It's really important to meet people face to face, in person, and to connect with someone beyond job title, beyond a status, beyond any preconceived ideas. So any great times, memories, moments that you've shared at the Nine will be thanks, yes, to the beautiful space, but really to the amazing people inside.
Yes, and really the attention to detail, it's amazing. So if you haven't been to the Nine, it's really a place to go to and network. So
try not to make it too work heavy. So yes, come and have a nice drink.
So I wanted to talk to you about the gender equality in hiring, because it's something that it's so important nowadays in the hiring. But how did you start advocating for it?
Okay, so in terms of gender equality in general, I, like many women, will have experienced gender inequality or gender discrimination. So sometimes nowadays, my biggest job is really just to open people's eyes to perhaps behaviors, comments, situations that they may not even be aware of as being unequal. Sometimes once you have taken those blinkers off, it can be very difficult to look at the rest of the world. But I'm a big believer in truth and justice, and I think it's important that we are aware of what is happening around us. Ignorance is only bliss to a certain point. And me personally, of course, living through the #MeToo years, in London in the early 2000s until 2010. No, sorry, what am I saying? 2015. Unavoidable, I'm afraid to say. I've had employers tell me to my face that I'm being paid less than a male for the same job because I have to prove myself. I had an employer who said that they only hired alpha females and beta males because we were of the same level. And again, this is said completely deadpan in staff meetings, and rightly or wrongly, you have to sit through this, and as a woman you have to soak it up and try not to let your inner rage out. And then now with the 9, I've kind of crossed over to the other side, being an employer and having 5 full-time members of staff and probably around anywhere between 5 and 10 sometimes students, flexies, part-time. So I've now seen it actually from the other side, and there I've also noticed the gender difference.
And I think also when it comes to hiring, now that you have people working for you as well, there is a difference in the process. That it's we can see it so clearly. What is that people could do differently?
What could people do differently? Well, as an employer, of course, I think it's important that we choose the correct language and that we are inclusive as much as possible. Very small details, when someone says this is a very fast-paced team, looking for dominant characteristics, any sort of language that would maybe imply more masculine or male-oriented positions, aggressive or competitive, that I think will deter some of us from applying. So trying to, as an employer, use more gender neutral language, and also making very clear, that's what I do at the 9, what our values are, what we stand for, and what we're looking to attract. I often say in my own adverts that education is less of a requirement than an indication, but of course someone's real skills can be seen in many different ways. So they also want to be aware of maybe different education levels that you can have here in Belgium, and that doesn't necessarily correspond with being a very proactive, hands-on and feet on the ground candidate. Then, as a applicant, what I've noticed in the last round of recruitments that I've done at the 9 is we had over 300 applications for a position, and once whittled down to a smaller number, the majority, not the only, but the majority of the candidates who would follow up both by email or by phone were the male candidates. So you would assume, and I certainly assumed, this is the 9, we're hiring. Obviously, you had a lot of women applying, we had a lot of men applying, and it was a lot of the male candidates who were being bolder, I think, in making sure that their name was being remembered. Just flagging, I've applied for this, I'm still very interested, taking that proactive step. So that was a surprising incident for me. So I would say to job seekers, if you are applying for the role, imagine there's going to be hundreds of people doing the same. So you do want to be proactive, and you do want to be enthusiastic without being annoying, maybe reaching out to the hiring manager that you can research, trying perhaps a phone call just to say, or asking where are you on the recruitment drive, I'm still interested in the role, if you have other roles opening up, etc. Showing you're also that you're doing your research, maybe know what the company's about. Someone did say to me how they've always wanted to work at a strip club, and I thought, I don't think you realize quite what we do. So details matter.
I think it's what you said, like there is a story in our heads how we have to behave, and we don't want to disturb. We don't want to like imagine that following up it can also lead to stalking. But if you do it in the right way, then you are memorable and you stand out.
Yes, I guess there's a lot of perhaps social conditioning that we've had as young women or as women to be perhaps polite, conscious of others, a little bit more demure. I hate to use that term, or mindful. I live to see Gen Z nowadays, and there's so much confidence and not no shame, but there's so much more energy than I think I had as a job seeker. And I think I would have sent out my applications without any sort of follow up, which nowadays, of course, people would say, don't do that. And you would say that as a recruiter, I'm sure.
Yeah, but also what I see when I work with executive search, uh, with with um, with female candidates. I mostly work in male-dominated industries, so I always have conversations with the hiring manager. What are your expectations? And they always say that if we could get a female candidate, that would be like the best solution. They would stand out, and it would be awesome to have a female person in the team. But when I reach out to female candidates, and if they have from 10 requirements, they have, let's say, half or 7, they're like, oh, I don't have everything, so I'm not applying. And the same thing if in general, if a man would have 3 of the 10 requirements, they would say, I'm the top candidate. So I have to convince the female candidates to participate in the recruitment process because I am convinced that they could do the job based on the skills and experience that they have. So this is really where the inequality comes in as well, practically.
Yeah, I mean, imposter syndrome exists for the term exists for a reason. It taps into a very real feeling that many of us share because, I mean, ultimately, the world wasn't designed for us, so we do feel like imposters in a system and a structure that wasn't created for or by us. Now we are. I'm certainly an example of trying to create a different structure and maybe a different way of doing things or from a different angle, but still quite rare. So you would be surprised about the number of speakers I've also heard here at the Nine, women in powerful positions who share their own doubts and vulnerabilities or have done throughout their career. Whereas, as you say, I think maybe if you look at more male candidates, it's like, oh, it's not that I haven't done it, but I could do it. Whereas we want to show that we have done it and therefore we can do it. It's a different approach.
Yeah, that we tick already all the boxes. And normally what companies are looking for is not someone who has everything and has done everything, but that they still have space to grow, to develop.
Indeed, because then, I mean, what I've seen from experience, but I can imagine once you reach a certain level, where do you go? And it's frustrating for you and for your employer. So what I love to talk about with my team, and especially with the managers, is okay, what's next? What next for you is going to give you the satisfaction, is going to give you that job satisfaction, that growth, and can also feed into your your personal needs as a human being. What new skills, what new languages could you imagine developing?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when it comes to, you were talking about the language that is so important in the hiring process. What more could we do to avoid the bias?
Well, I know a lot of organizations and in their job adverts will say, we welcome applications from a diverse range of candidates, trying to cover legally a couple of loopholes. Something that I also did, as I said before, your qualifications are less indicative to me than your perhaps work experience. So again, taking the onus away from having a very high, perhaps university, if that, degree to other skill sets or transferable skills. The language will be one. I think perhaps maybe being open with, is there going to be availability for part-time or home working? Where could, if you can imagine, if we're looking more for flexible working conditions, being upfront with that in the job posting, likewise for salary postings. So I think, it always irks me whenever I see, salary on application or without having even a range. It raises a lot of questions, and I have to be honest, in Brussels especially within gender roles here, I've seen some very low pay for even manager positions, which I think again do us a disservice, because if you are working as a manager in whatever field, you should be remunerated appropriately. And I think one of the worst offenders I saw, it was really like maybe 1,500 a month net, and as a manager in a large organization for gender equality. And I thought, that's very limiting. And also then how can that person in that position do a full job if they're also concerned about meeting bills at the end of the month?
Exactly. So it's yeah, it shouldn't be charity. You really have to live with that salary, which is almost impossible. Yeah,
fair pay for fair work.
exactly. What are the trends that you're seeing in recruitment when it comes to gender inclusion?
I think what I'm seeing the biggest trend of is many of us are not staying as long as we have done in the past. So I'm seeing a lot of people moving, and really across industries. So taking those skills and really transferring them to go more sideways rather than always up. I'm surprised, one imagines the very kind of corporate pyramid world, which is what I was brought up in. I'm surprised by sometimes hearing, actually, no, my was it my 5 to 9, or my after work time is more important to me than my 9 to 5. And so this understanding that I'm not going to have full job satisfaction, maybe 9 to 5, but I will do something in my time, is volunteering if it's a side or a second job, or I will move sideways for better benefits, pay, etc., rather than aiming always higher and higher. I think there's a lot of rightful suspicion perhaps and cynicism when it comes to, if it's big corporate world, big law, etc., and then you see different agencies and organizations setting up alongside. Women are asking for more, rightly so, and being a little bit more upfront with, these are my non-negotiables.
Yeah,
What do you see, Tiina?
I think it's a really good observation about the industry, because I work with LinkedIn, so the paid version of LinkedIn that's called LinkedIn Recruiter, to do the finding the international talent with the help of different keywords. And then it gives me access to all the candidates on LinkedIn. And when I can't find the female candidate, for example, it says, do you want to add more gender diversity to the search? Then you should broaden your search to different industries or to those companies. But sometimes companies are so fixed at how important industry knowledge is and how quickly you actually can acquire industry knowledge in a new position in comparison with other skills. So I think there is really the key to be more open-minded, that it brings new thoughts and ways of best practices to the company when you take somebody from a totally different industry or related industry.
Yes, and I have a great example with Coralie, our club events manager. Coralie oversees all the member events and experiences. Her academic background is in law, worked previously in e-commerce and fashion, had more volunteering experience in events, but came with such passion and motivation, and honestly sold it to me, or sold herself to me in this, with these kind of fun facts, like I spent the night with the boa constrictor. I will never forget that. There was a small line on her CV, interesting facts about me, and I thought, wow, okay, she's not unafraid, and you need to have this, of course, if you're running, as we often do, up to 7 events a week. So certainly not afraid of a challenge. And I think, again, not meeting, maybe 10 out of 10 of the criteria that you may have, but, more than enough in other areas, or showing at least that you have that motivation, showing you've done your research, calling me by my correct name, understanding that a private members club is different to a strip club, small details that make all the difference.
And I think that the cultural match is so much more important than, and Coralie really has it. You feel it. It's the right hiring decision that has been made. So that she's so welcoming and really understands the values and lives it.
That's a great point, because I did a lot of work on this when I was launching the 9. What are our values? What is our mission statement? What do we stand for? And if businesses haven't done that, or at least aren't able to tell you this during the recruitment process, then it's very difficult to know or to have an indication of what workplace culture may be like.
Yeah. I have, let me take some comments that we have. Hello, ladies. It's Gillian Whitney. Excited to be joining you today from San Antonio, Texas. So we have other people also joining us. If you want to say hi, you're welcome to say hi and ask any questions. What do you think are the challenges today in hiring when it comes to gender equality?
Ooh. Well, I think one of the biggest challenges in general, beyond even gender, is the competition, is the number of candidates. And I had this myself. I think it's very difficult to fully differentiate when you do have hundreds of applications that look very similar, maybe similar paths, or very passionate motivation letters or introductions. I think AI, of course, we haven't touched on AI, but of course this is a huge topic, and increasingly so when it comes to algorithm and bias. But in terms of writing perhaps a cover letter or a introduction, as a former journalist, I can see immediately when something is AI or doesn't read necessarily as, how do I say this, as naturally as you may write it yourself. And so what I've also seen in practice is then the jump from CV to in-person, if we're doing a trial shift or perhaps a couple of days live, is immense. So if you are going to use AI tools to help you craft the perfect CV or to best present yourself, you want to make sure that you can back that up in person. Because trust me, ChatGPT is not going to be there if I ask you a question.
Not in your pocket, exactly. And also when it comes to applications, there are thousands and thousands of applications. So for each position. So that's why it's so important to stand out. And when it comes to executive search, then it's the opposite side. I'm reaching out to candidates who I know could do the work, and then we narrow it down for the company, so they have less people to interview. But because nowadays I hear there are so many applications, and most of the applications are not even like, if the requirement is that you have to speak, let's say Flemish,
Mhm.
then you can't come from the other side of the world and apply for the position, because you're not qualified for what is the not good to have but must have. So yeah, selecting out the CVs that actually have the requirements, it takes a lot of job or work. So that's why yeah, it's really important to understand why companies are not replying to all the applications if you're
Yes.
applying.
I've had the same. Really, it can be unmanageable, and I think that's why it's really so important to try and build a human connection. So if not necessarily like in person, but maybe through LinkedIn or by email, just taking that extra step rather than shooting a CV off into the void. And I'm sure you, yeah, as we've said before, you know that there are literally thousands, especially on LinkedIn alone. So I always value people who can take initiative. That's a very good marker for what will be inevitably um, a role that can adapt at any moment. And via. So what I see at the Nine, for example, a lot of times is someone say, I'm looking for this job, or I'm looking for this role, I'm looking to move. Do you know anyone? Asking around. You know, our networks are much bigger, and also I think much more valuable than we sometimes realize.
I think the network that we create is so important, and understand what's that you have to create it before you need it, and also help other people who are in your network, because when it's your time or your turn, when you need something, it's easier to ask for a favor back.
Yes, I see this at the Nine. One of the great evolutions and results of the Nine is that we have, you know, the old boys club now has a bit of a little competitor, and those connections are not necessarily always professionally based. So again, you're not coming in here thinking, oh, I'm joining the Nine because in 3 years' time I want to move. No, you wanting to meet new people, make new friends, have these maybe different contacts who you can connect with, and then maybe one day someone will ask, oh, have you heard of anything? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but it only takes, I think, maybe one conversation or two links to make all the difference.
Yeah, and I think women are in general not as good in networking, so this space is really like what we all needed, and it really makes a difference and teaches baby steps how to do it, because we haven't had the opportunity to do it
Yes, I
and
mean, of
learn.
course, historically we haven't had, you know, centuries of access to the workforce, or at least not in as many industries as we may have wanted. So we are still playing catch up, and I think especially in STEM, that's why there's a big focus on STEM, and it starts with education to bring us through into career paths. As your point for networking, I've seen some fantastic female networkers here. It's true that it is a skill. I think it's also something that you need to keep repeating. It's not enough to maybe do one or two events a year and then kind of, oh, I'm done now. It's about being a human and, you know, reaching out to other people as humans, and not, for me, it's always quite confronting when someone just comes up to me and like kind of hands a business card and launches into this perhaps sometimes either a rant or a stream of consciousness without going through the like getting to know each other. I mean, we do, so the experts say, we do network differently, and we do want to find common points or common threads of interest.
Yeah. So what would be your final words that you want people to think about to take away from this conversation?
I would say we do live in a gender unequal world, which just means that you have to adopt very coherent, consistent, and sometimes playing up to your advantage strategies. So never forget where we were 10, 20, 50 years ago and where we want to be in 10, 20, 50 years. And so it's going to be up to us to change all the processes that you and I have spoken about today.
And where can people find you and connect with you?
Or LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me in person more often than not at the 9, which is 2 steps away from the Schumann Roundabout in Brussels.
Thank you very much for this conversation. It was really lovely to talk to you today.
With pleasure. Thank you, Tiina.
Bye, Georgia.
Bye.